I never believed in those moments that people say change your life forever. You know, the ones that start out so ordinary, so painfully routine, that you'd never expect them to be anything but forgettable. But now, looking back, I realize that the most extraordinary things often hide inside the ordinary. That's exactly what happened to me on a Saturday evening that began like any other. If you've ever had a day that started out normal but ended up changing everything you thought you knew about yourself and the people around you, you'll know exactly what I mean. It was late afternoon, and I was sprawled on my bed, scrolling through my phone, half listening to the faint noise of the TV in the living room. My dad's voice floated down the hallway, casual and cheerful. "Hey, just a heads up, a few of my old friends are coming over tonight." I barely looked up from my phone. Dad's friends had been visiting for years, and it was always the same old stories, the same laughter, the same jokes I'd heard a million times before. But there was something different in Dad's voice that day. Maybe it was the way he lingered in the doorway, or maybe it was the nervous energy in his smile. "You'll come say hello, right?" he asked, almost as if he needed reassurance. I promised I would, not thinking much of it. After all, what could possibly happen that hadn't already happened a dozen times before? As the sun began to set, the house started to change. Mom was bustling around the kitchen, the smell of spices and fresh bread filling the air. I heard the sound of the doorbell, then the unmistakable laughter of Mr. Harris, Mr. Patel, and Mr. Evans. Their voices boomed through the house, bringing with them a wave of nostalgia and something else, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. I peeked out of my room and saw them in the hallway, hugging Dad, slapping him on the back, their faces lit up with genuine happiness. They looked older than I remembered, but their eyes still sparkled with the same mischief from my childhood memories. I suddenly felt a strange mix of excitement and anxiety. I quickly brushed my hair, changed into a nicer shirt, and took a deep breath before stepping out to greet them. The moment I entered the living room, all eyes turned to me. Mr. Harris grinned. "Wow, look at you. The last time I saw you, you were running around in pajamas with chocolate all over your face." Everyone laughed, and for a brief moment, all my nerves melted away. Mr. Patel handed me a box of sweets, and Mr. Evans gave me a gentle nod, his eyes kind and knowing. But as I sat down with them, I couldn't shake the feeling that tonight was going to be different. The air was thick with anticipation, as if everyone knew a secret that I hadn't been let in on yet. And in that moment, I had no idea just how much everything was about to change. Dinner was always a big deal in our house, especially when guests were over. Mom had outdone herself, and the table was covered with steaming dishes, colorful salads, and the kind of homemade bread that makes you forget every diet you've ever tried. The men settled in, their laughter echoing off the walls, and I found myself sandwiched between Dad and Mr. Harris, who immediately started telling one of his legendary stories. At first, everything felt familiar. The men reminisced about their college days, about wild road trips and late-night study sessions that somehow turned into all-night poker games. I watched as Dad's eyes lit up, his laughter deeper and more genuine than I'd seen in a long time. For a while, I was content to just listen, letting their memories wash over me like a warm blanket. But then, the conversation shifted. Mr. Patel, usually the quiet one, turned to me and asked, "So, what's new with you? What are your dreams these days?" For a moment, I was caught off guard. No one had ever asked me that in such a direct, sincere way before. I hesitated, glancing at Dad for support. He gave me a gentle smile, encouraging me to speak. So I did. I talked about my studies, my hopes for the future, and the pressure I sometimes felt to live up to expectations. To my surprise, they really listened. Mr. Evans nodded thoughtfully, sharing how his own path had been anything but straight. "Life has a way of surprising you," he said. Sometimes you end up somewhere you never expected, and it turns out to be exactly where you needed to be. The conversation grew deeper. Mr. Harris admitted he'd struggled with self-doubt for years, even after becoming successful. Mr. Patel talked about the sacrifices he'd made for his family, and how he sometimes wondered if he'd chosen the right path. Dad shared a story I'd never heard before about a time he almost gave up on his dreams, and how his friends had pulled him through. As I listened, I realized that these men weren't just my dad's friends, they were a support system, a chosen family, each carrying their own scars and stories. And for the first time, I felt like I was truly part of their circle. After dinner, the mood lightened as Dad suggested we play a board game. The living room transformed into a battleground of playful banter and competitive spirit. Mr. Harris, ever the entertainer, made up new rules just to see if anyone would notice. Mr. Patel pretended to be a ruthless strategist, while Mr. Evans quietly observed, his eyes twinkling with amusement. As the game went on, I found myself laughing harder than I had in months. There was something freeing about being surrounded by people who'd known me since childhood, who'd seen me at my best and worst, and who loved me anyway. For a while, it felt like nothing could go wrong. But beneath the surface, I sensed something more. During a break, Mr. Evans pulled me aside. He asked about my friendships, my struggles, and whether I ever felt alone. His questions were gentle but probing, and I found myself opening up about things I'd never shared before: the fear of not fitting in, the anxiety of making big decisions, the loneliness that sometimes crept in late at night. He listened without judgment, offering advice without ever sounding preachy. "It's okay to feel lost," he said. "What matters is that you keep moving forward, even when you're not sure where you're going." Back in the living room, the laughter continued, but I felt different. Lighter somehow. Like a weight I hadn't even realized I was carrying had been lifted. I looked around at Dad and his friends, and I realized that these moments, the laughter, the honesty, the connection, were what really mattered. The night was far from over, and I had no idea that the biggest surprises were still to come. As the clock crept past midnight, the energy in the house shifted again. The board games were packed away, the dishes cleared, and the men settled into the living room with mugs of tea and soft music playing in the background. The conversation grew quieter, more intimate, as if the darkness outside had given everyone permission to let down their guard. Dad started talking about the past, not just the funny stories, but the hard times, too. He spoke about losing his job years ago, about the fear and shame he'd felt, and how his friends had helped him through it. Mr. Harris admitted to making mistakes in his marriage, and how he'd learned to forgive himself. Mr. Patel shared the pain of losing his father, and the guilt he carried for things left unsaid. Then, unexpectedly, they turned to me. Mr. Evans asked, "What's something you've never told anyone?" The room fell silent, all eyes on me. My heart pounded in my chest. I thought about the secrets I'd kept, the fears I'd buried, the dreams I'd been too afraid to share. I took a deep breath and spoke. I told them about my struggles with anxiety, about the nights I lay awake worrying about the future, about the times I felt like I wasn't enough. I talked about the pressure to be perfect, to make everyone proud, and how exhausting it could be. No one interrupted. No one laughed or dismissed my feelings. Instead, they listened, really listened, and when I finished, there was a moment of silence that felt heavy and comforting at the same time. Dad reached over and squeezed my hand. "You're not alone," he said. "We've all been there. And we're here for you, no matter what." In that moment, I felt a sense of belonging I'd never known before. The walls I'd built around myself started to crumble, replaced by something stronger: trust, understanding, and love. As the night wore on, the conversation turned to the future. Dad and his friends talked about their hopes and fears for the years ahead. Mr. Harris dreamed of traveling the world, Mr. Patel wanted to write a book, and Mr. Evans hoped to reconnect with an old friend he hadn't seen in decades. They encouraged me to chase my own dreams, to take risks, and to never settle for less than I deserved. "Life's too short to play it safe," Mr. Harris said, raising his mug in a toast. "Go after what you want, even if it scares you." We talked about love, loss, and everything in between. I asked them questions I'd never dared to ask before. How did you know you were making the right choice? Did you ever regret the path you took? What advice would you give your younger self? Their answers were honest, sometimes painful, but always filled with hope. They talked about the importance of forgiveness, of letting go of the past, and of finding joy in the little things. Dad told me that the best moments in life are often the ones you never see coming, the spontaneous adventures, the late-night talks, the quiet acts of kindness. As the first light of dawn crept through the windows, I realized that everything had changed. I wasn't just Dad's child anymore. I was an adult, with my own dreams, my own fears, and my own story to write. The next morning, the house was filled with a peaceful silence. Dad's friends had left, but their presence lingered in every corner, in the empty mugs on the table, the faint echo of laughter in the hallway, and the warmth that still filled my heart. I sat with Dad at the kitchen table, sipping tea as the sun rose higher in the sky. He looked at me, his eyes soft and proud. "You know," he said, "last night reminded me of what really matters. It's not the money, or the success, or even the big achievements. It's the people you love, the memories you make, and the courage to be yourself." I nodded, understanding in a way I never had before. The night before had changed me. It had shown me that vulnerability isn't weakness, that asking for help is a sign of strength, and that the people who love you will always be there, even when you feel most alone. As I got ready to face the day, I felt a new sense of confidence and hope. I knew there would be challenges ahead, but I also knew I wasn't facing them alone. I had my family, my friends, and the lessons I'd learned from a night that started out ordinary but ended up changing everything. If you've ever had a moment like this, a night that opened your eyes, a conversation that changed your heart, or a realization that helped you grow, share your story in the comments below. Let's create a community where we can support each other, celebrate our victories, and lift each other up in our struggles. And if this story touched you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need a reminder that they're not alone. Because sometimes, all it takes is one night, one conversation, and one act of courage to change everything.